Good afternoon. My name is Tom Inglaz. I'm the coordinator of Noon Arts and Lectures, and it's a series that has been unfolding here in downtown San Jose for 12 years. The focus of Noon Arts and Lectures is to introduce professional performing artists to audience, and this would be not necessarily audience of concert goers, but people who might not be acquainted with the experience of going to a fine arts event. And they can meet with an artist close and personal, learn about their background, why they have a passion for what they do, learn about their instrument, what's interesting and what's wrong about it, and also learn about their current project and hear some samples of the upcoming performance. So that's the focus of Noon Arts and Lectures. Since starting in 2013, this will be the 191st presentation. They all took place in downtown San Jose, many of them right here at First Unitarian, and they were all for an admission-free audience. This is the first time I'm breaking from the framework of professional performing artists and focusing on structural art. So it's an experiment. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to now introduce Patrick, co-chair for the building committee, and he will get us underway.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of San Jose. Before I introduce the panel, I'd like to take care of some business. The bathrooms are through that door and downstairs, just so in case anyone needs to know. And we'll get going here. Our panel today, we have our Reverend Matthew. Come on, come on. Woo. Our contractor, Jim Salata. Thank you, Garden City Construction. And there was no way this was going to happen without Sue. Thank you, Sue, very much. And I will, without further delay.
All right, so we'll start with Rev Matthew.
All right. Good afternoon. I have to catch myself when I welcome people to not say good morning, because so often I'm saying good morning, so I'm pleased that I remembered this time. So I'm the Reverend Matt, and I have been serving this congregation here for just over a year. I started in August of last year, and it's been a pleasure to be here. Been up and down the Bay Area, or up and down California. I served a congregation in LA for 8 years before coming here, and it's been a real pleasure to be here. And actually, I'm appreciative of this opportunity to talk a little bit more about the history of this church. Some of that is the building, some of it's kind of like history in the community. You know, as someone who's been here for a little over than a year, to do my own research and find some new things that I didn't know before I started working on this. So the first services, the first Unitarian services that were held in San Jose were actually 160 years ago in 1865. At the time, there was a minister, a few Unitarian ministers preaching in California, not very many, and the Reverend Charles Gordon Ames, who had been preaching mostly, I think, in the Bay Area, had been invited by Laura J. Watkins. Now, I was in researching the history, you know, if you read like the information about her, it was Mr. and Mrs. B.F. Watkins. There was always listed that way, but it was who got this thing started, but really it was Laura. And so I think that actually took a little bit of work to unearth her name, even though so much work, religious work, has often been done by women. So they had both been members of the Unitarian Church in San Francisco, despite living down here in San Jose. And after canvassing some people and talking with people, she saw there was a need for liberal religion in Santa Clara County. And so she invited Reverend Ames to come down to speak. It was at City Hall in 1965, and there were about 100 people who came to hear Reverend Ames speak. And, he preached his first sermon had been, this was during the Civil War and had just come through the South on his way to California a few months before. And so he devoted his sermon to the freedom and dignity of all people. Of course, at the time he would have said of all men, but we know to be more expansive. And so from that, there was a loose organization, the San Jose Unity Society. So it was really it was effectively a Unitarian congregation, but they were calling themselves Unity. And there's many details I have to kind of elide over or gloss over. But it was a pretty hodgepodge thing. There weren't very many Unitarian ministers in California at all. A few had come over in the wake of the boom from the gold rush, but because Unitarianism was centered in the Northeast, and there were only 2 seminaries in the country, one which was in Meadville, was in Pennsylvania, and then Harvard Divinity School was the other one where Unitarian ministers got trained in Boston. There weren't very many ministers out here. And so for the first several years, Ames had actually gone down to Santa Cruz a year later in 1866 to found a church there. And so he was living in Santa Cruz, and once a month he would come up over the pass on horseback to preach a sermon here. Or not here, but to preach a sermon in San Jose. And at that point, they were meeting in the music hall. I don't know where or what the music hall was, but that's what the records say. There was a music hall here in downtown San Jose. And they would occasionally have ministers who would come by and speak. Reverend Ames did that for about 4 years, where he would come up once a month. And then he went off. I believe he was called down he went down to San Diego to found the church there, which for many years was the largest church in California, may still be. So they had speakers off and on. They had someone come and preach for like a few months. That was often what they could get. And after there was a lot of kind of enthusiasm and interest, they actually bought a plot of land on 63 South 5th Street, which they were planning to use for a future building that never actually got built. Again, due to that kind of constantly ups and downs and get what you can get. And then they had a new minister in 1888, Reverend Nahum Haskell, which brought kind of renewed energy to the congregation. And so they purchased a new lot, the one here at 1600 North 3rd Street. And so on September 23rd, 1891, they laid the cornerstone of the new church. And bids for the construction work opened in October 13th, 1981. So it was actually, about 3 weeks after they bought the property. And then within a year, by September 1892, they had built this church at a cost of $29,551.85. Which, man, I mean, it didn't include the hall at the time, so it wasn't the whole property, which is why you can understand why it was a very reasonable price. And so they had a dedication service at the end of that September on the 25th, and it drew, I think, one of the largest audiences of this church's history, maybe the largest audience it ever had, of 1,000 people who showed up. It was, overflow. People were spilled out like into the, onto the sidewalk, into the street, and even into St. James Park for the dedication. And then just a few months after that, the minister at the First Baptist Church of San Jose, Reverend J.H. Garnett, was preaching a sermon, and basically he came out to his congregation as a Unitarian. He was like, I'm no longer a Trinitarian. I've come to change my theology. And that was a whole schism that we don't need to get into. But then he came over here, just like 3 months after this church was finished being built, and ended up serving as the associate minister for a few years. Now, the thing about, we may look at a building cost of $29,000 being, wow, if only $29,000 to build a whole building. But of course, at that time, it was a lot of money. The church was actually in a fair amount of debt. They had about $15,000 in debt that they had to pay off. And so Reverend Haskell, who was the senior minister at the time, requested the community to donate between like $15,000 and $20,000 for a capital project to cover the building debt, but also to purchase a new organ, to expand the church the lot, and also construct a library building. And part of it, this was in the 1890s when there was an economic depression, and so there wasn't enough money. And did not get a particularly enthusiastic response to that. And so he decamped for a congregation in Denver. And then a little after that, Reverend Garnett, who had tried to raise, having that first campaign not succeed, he tried a second campaign to raise $15,000 just to pay off the debt. And that didn't succeed either, and so he decamped back to the Baptists, who probably were able to pay a little bit better and more consistently. And so that was actually a challenge for the church for many of its first years, was the debt of the building. But at the end of the 1890s, with the end of the Depression, they were able to raise enough money to float some bonds and then pay off that debt over a longer period of time. But still, it was a challenge. They were a congregation that would fluctuate in size from, less than 100 members. Sometimes it might be a few dozen. Sometimes it might be closer to a dozen, just kind of depending on what was going on. And then they got the True Life Church started. I feel like I'm.
You're done.
All right. Give me about like 4 more minutes.
Okay.
Sorry. There's so many details. So anyway, they managed, so we had to, so we rented the space out to the True Life Church, and that kind of helped things. But really for most of the 20th century even, there was lots of, ups and downs. It was never a very large church at any given time, but they were still very engaged in the community. That's been a long part of the Unitarian tradition, is to be active in working for justice in a variety of different ways. And so you can see some of that in your handout, with kind of a general timeline, folks founding the first children's nursery school in San Jose. There was, we supported, the members of the congregation spoke out against the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, spoke out about a lynching that had happened in St. James Park in the 1930s, refused to sign a loyalty oath during the kind of communist scare, and actually ended up taking that case along with like 6 other churches to the Supreme Court and winning. But that had posed some financial challenges to the church at the time. And like in the 1970s, this congregation hosted 12-step groups for gay and lesbian focused 12-step groups who couldn't find another space to meet. We also at that point hosted the Metropolitan Community Church, which is a LGBTQ friendly, predominantly LGBTQ church that was founded in the 1960s. And again, they weren't big enough and didn't have their own space at the time. And so they met here because no one else was willing to rent to them. In the 1980s, we participated in the refugee program for Salvadoran refugees. And so that was an important part of our history and identity, is seeing ourselves as supporting people who are marginalized, something that continues to this day with support for migrants in our community who were being targeted. In the 1980s, this church called the Reverend Lindy Ramsden, who, when the church was about, had about a dozen people attending, maybe like 25 members on the books. And the church grew dramatically during her tenure, during her 17-year tenure. And Lindy was also only the third out lesbian to serve Unitarian Universalist church in the country. She was the first one on the West Coast. The second one had started serving a church like a few months before her. So, that was a big deal, and an important part of, I think, this church's identity as well. In the 1990s, there was something written in the Mercury News about the lesbian minister serving this church, and then for the next several weeks, like a bunch of people started showing up. We have some hands who saw that, and they were like, "Oh, let me check this place out." We started a Spanish language ministry that lasted for many years. That was also serving a majority of the people who were participating in that were LGBT. Who didn't necessarily find places where they could feel comfortable in the religious communities they had come from. And actually, I think that being part of that support for the LGBTQ community was really significant in an unexpected way, which is there was a 12-step group that was meeting one night. Sorry, I skipped over one thing, and I apologize. I'm going over.
He's a minister. Sermons are 20 minutes. I gave him 10.
That was so you'd keep me to 15, right? Sorry. So on the 100th anniversary of the building of the church, there was a capital campaign to improve it because it had, it needed a lot of work over the years that had been kind of deferred. It's this big, beautiful, historic church. And so they were doing work to repair the roof. And the workers who were there had left on a lit torch unintentionally that ended up catching the roof on fire. And the 12-step group that was meeting outside saw the smoke, called the fire department, and turned what could have been an absolutely massive disaster into an only pretty massive disaster. So, a big chunk of the building, of the roof was burned off. And exposed. It was right before the rainy season, and so the interior just got damaged with water. There's hymnals that still have the water damage. But it was also an opportunity we raised a bunch of money through particularly Reverend Lindy's work to fix the damage that had been done, but also dig out the basement and put in some offices. That's also when we started hosting the 3rd Street Community Center downstairs, which is an after-school program primarily serving downtown youth, and with STEM and engineering to kind of connect into the Silicon Valley, being engaged in computer science and engineering and math and all that. And so that's been a program that's been running for a while. And so it was only years later that we started a capital campaign a few years ago to finally do the work of restoring the outside of the work that really was supposed to be done in the 1990s and that we ran out of money for, which brings us 15 minutes or 17 minutes up to the present day. So.
Well, that's not too bad. That's better than I thought we might get out of here with. But very interesting. So the current restoration project began in the building committee in 2016. Was the first full list of, okay, what do we need to do? And then we revisited it in 2020 and 2021. And then it's like, okay, this is a lot of work. So we'd worked on sort of the technical side of what are all our systems, what are their status, and what do we need to do? And then the whole church got involved in how do we pay for it? So I'm going to go through a few things here. I do want to mention before I forget, we had lots of support from the church and from the whole building committee. There were 3 of us who headed up the capital construction. That was Patrick and me, and Jim Rumbaugh kept track of all of the money and made sure we could pay for it and kept paying the bills. And in the projects going forward now with the capital of the interior, I'd like to thank Monty up in Tech, who is heading up our improvements in AV. Yay, Monty! And as well as other folks continuing on with the other interior restoration. So I want to show you just a couple historic, and I've invited Jim to just jump in whenever he feels like, because if you've ever had a chance to listen to him tell stories, this is what we're all here for. And
I can't tell those stories.
I know. It's a UU church.
Yeah. Did you know I interviewed for the first time in your renovation? You weren't here then, right?
I was not, and you didn't get the job, but I wish you
No.
had.
Yeah, we wouldn't have had the
No,
whole.
I don't know, man. I think
Better tennis getter.
I
do it.
always tell my guys that it's better. The best lesson you can learn is somebody else's mistake. So
Yeah, there you go. Great. Okay. So here is the laying the cornerstone, and all the horses and buggies and the winch there in 1891. And there's 1895 San Jose Mercury put in, had a story, and that's why out the back hall did have the kitchen on it on the side. And then here's around 1920s. And you'll notice the building that's, if you're out front looking, that's to the right of our bell tower. That building is actually the Belvedere Hospital. And there's the Belvedere Hospital run by two ladies, a full surgical, modern surgical facility, and our bell tower to the left. And Garden City found this photo when they were doing some work. And then there's a little later, some 40s cars and whatnot. Just wanted, so that's what we're able to dig up for what the historical photos were. Now, before, the first time we were working on this project, the first thing we tried to do was get someone to bid the job. And the answer was, we can't. We have absolutely no idea how big this job is until we look at everything. Every window, inside and out, every ledge, every crack, everything. And so that's what, in 2021, we started the first building capital campaign. And then in the fall of 2022 to spring of 23, they did this inspection, and you're going to see some of those photos and see what we were looking at, what they were looking at. Because we said, well, you'd have to put up 3 stories of scaffolding. It's expensive. For doing that, we ought to fix the woodwork that has probably never been fixed since it was built. Some of it had, epoxy work and so forth, but none of it had really been. And that's the, sort of one of the significant things about this project is that every crack was fixed. Every window ledge was fixed. They restored everything. So to give you an idea of what that, how complex that roof is, here's the drone. They brought in drones, and there were patches, and we'd had them in while we were trying to build money. To keep patching the roof because it was falling apart, keep fixing the walls. So they did this deep dive, and these are from the old fire, but you can see how complex the whole system is. We've got a bunch of windows, we've got all these different angles and cracks and places where flashing could wear out. And these are, all these corbels. And some of them were in fine shape, and some of them were missing chunks. And the bell tower has these fish scale louvers who were all eaten up. But I wanted to show the inside. There were some from the inside of the bell tower and show you what the interior construction looks like. It was all built of redwood. Do you have any more thoughts on the original construction?
No, the only thing that intrigues me is it looks like the exterior was brick before the '06 earthquake in those photographs, and I've never been able to get a clear enough one to figure it out. But if you look closely, it seems like there's some ornamentation that's buried in different, if you compare those two photographs. And I haven't had really a lot of time to study that, but it still bugs me that I haven't figured that out yet, you know.
We don't have any drawings from that. They didn't, yeah, that's a little too far. And they would go to all lengths. This is, I suspect this is Brad Pawlowski's hand, leaning over the edge of the front steps, taking a photo of the rot. I'm not sure that their workers' comp wants to know that that's what how they. That was before the scaffolding. That was before scaffolding. This is during, yeah.
So they just covered the rot with a sheet metal and a lot of nails.
And this is actually the little cupola that's on top of Hattie Porter Hall. Don't usually see that a lot, but it's all, you can tell the wavy, rotten metalwork and so forth. And if you look at the transom on the top of the doors, you see it cracked, and the stop, I don't know if you guys, you remember, our front doors were in such bad shape, we just had to put stop, do not use, except for emergency. And, yeah.
Was that all 6 doors?
We tried to keep a pair working. One of the two did. They all worked, you just had to work on getting them back together. But the glass was beautiful. And there was actually quite a bit of glass work. You can kind of tell if you look around that there's some of the glass isn't match exactly. And that was done by a fellow after the 95 fire. And I was told I wish I remembered his name. He hadn't been with the congregation long, but he was a glass artist. And he was, brought to us to fix that glass, because he basically fixed the glass in the sanctuary and the rest of the building. And then he was moved on to whatever church and whatever town he was really in next. But that's why we had, it's original glass with the repairs done after the fire by one artist. Now, these front doors were, held together with epoxy and so forth. Steve Saunders did a lot of the work to keep them in one piece. The doors are, even those are redwood framed, is that correct?
Probably, yeah. I don't recall, to tell you the truth.
Okay,
It might be fur.
yeah. The interior doors are, I know from working on them, are redwood underneath that's faux painting. That's not the real wood. Those are redwood doors, redwood panels. And there were cracks everywhere that had been either, a little epoxy in them, or they just, sort of barely been cleaned out and then patched and fallen apart. And that's what underneath the rafters kind of looked like, was all this wood hanging down, around all of the exterior. But I want to show you this. This is how they built the bell tower turret. It's built with 2x4s, or
I guess cut a radius on them, and that's amazing. Amazing framing. That is redwood.
and then some of the glass windows were held together with wire. But you see the sticky there, and we have a picture inside and out for every single window in the entire building. And we now have the original ironwork levers on every window. And then there's, the outside of that. So then we got to start rebuilding. Now, because we are UUs, we voted on the paint scheme. The committee came up with, not just the three of us, but we needed a little more aesthetic versus construction input. So we grabbed some folks we knew had opinions on colors and things, and we called them the aesthetic committee. We still call on them when we need an opinion that's a little more than functional. And put together a few different choices of light or more, tan or this color, that color, whatnot. And then we voted. And that's why we have the cream outside with the dark green trim and the, Boston red brick color on the brickwork and the Everglades green doors. There's a reason we did that, though, because it matches the glass. The door color matches the glass in the doors. And the first project was the restoration of those doors. Before any of the roofing or anything happened, these guys took them down, took them to the shop, rebuilt them, got them primed, brought them back out, put them up. And in doing that, they found, sorted out which of the original hardware still works. There's one double set of doors that has modern hardware. The other two double sets of doors have the original brass hinges. And if you walk around the building and look, you'll see there's original brass knobs. Every little doorknob, except where we've replaced for better accessibility and so forth. Every doorknob is different. They're all a little filigree.
Was there a thought to the color pattern in terms of like how that relates to this space as a historic landmark?
So there is a document of what the buildings around St. James Square have to conform to, and the answer is natural colors. And if you look at the photos closely, you'll see doors were white. The doors were white with different colors, different patterns. They were dark. They were this, that, and the other. And we just sort of dared them.
We faked it. So anything in the theory is it can be undone in the future, right? It's a paint color. Mm-hmm. So we sold it. Really, that's the only thing we hired the architect for is the submit those paint colors that we were doing. And other than that was pretty much our only involvement. And that color on the doors, as soon as I saw the mock-up, and I insisted on mock-ups. You have to have mock-ups. You can't figure it out by looking at a brush out or a paint chip. You got to put it on there. The sun is one color, and the shade is another color. So as the sun moves around, it changes how the building looks. So you have to have it on there. But yeah, that color on the doors, I was so excited when I knew it was right. You know it's right when it's right. But there wasn't too many gyrations of going around and around, maybe 3 times, and then finally I made a good decision. And by the way, Patrick and Jim and Sue were unbelievable to work with. You should be very proud of them. I'm 80. I've never really had a job where we had that great of collaboration, and I'm totally ADD, and Sue kept my feet to the frickin' fire so that I didn't forget things that we talked about. But it was awesome, really awesome. So that made the job worthwhile. We're a team. That's what a team's for. You supplement each other, and you make a whole. So we did it.
Yeah. There was the daily text stream of we're doing this. Is this what about this fixture? Well, let's call. I don't know. How about this other fixture? Yeah. That's good. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, let's do that. And that was about that. I mean, but over and over and over and over again was easy, but lots. Easy work, but lots and lots of it.
And no architect, we figured
Yeah.
it all out ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, I need a light fixture. I give you some samples of light fixture. I look up, I thought went with the church. And you guys pick one out, and the awning. I research on the internet. That metal awning, they liked it. So it was good. Good interaction. And then there are other details of the gutters. So I made a lot of people mad on this job, not you guys, but the subcontractors, because the first meeting we had, I did the history of the fire, and I said, I had the roofer up there, and I said, the roofer burnt a freaking building down. We're not gonna burn the building down. So you're gonna have your fire extinguishers, when you're soldering and all that. And I come out here and I didn't see one, and they didn't like me by the end of the job. So, and that and the quality of complicated segmented copper gutters on domes. Brad and I spent a lot of time trying to make sure we had good detailing. Some of the wood that was put in after the fire was Douglas fir, not redwood, so it completely rotted out. And we wanted to do it so it lasted a long time, for beyond our lifetimes, for sure.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. And then even doing that inspection, once they started pulling off old stuff, this is kind of what they found underneath. Yeah. And then this is what they did. They replaced all that. They replaced all that rot. They rebuilt. And this is up on top of the bell tower. And they gave us basically a roof membrane that we'd never had on the floor of the bell tower. So it no longer leaks, it no longer rains below the bell tower. And this is Brad Pulowski, and he was our project manager, and just fabulous, fabulous job. Great to work with, so knowledgeable. And this is him explaining to us how he's gonna have the copper guys construct a new gutters.
So again, we did mock-ups of the gutter and the sheet metal. I insisted on that so we could see how it would be detailed out. There's some very complicated details with that Dutch gutter. They call it a Dutch gutter up there to make sure that the wind-driven rain couldn't blow up underneath and that kind of thing. And I think we got her pretty good.
And I like copper, so here's a bunch of pictures of copper.
Somebody stole a bunch. Was that you?
No, I don't think no, but I'm not gonna tell you where I live.
Somebody stole.
No, there was extra pieces that just
Yeah.
disappeared.
I don't know, that wasn't me. I wish. Right now, it still looks like that. You can go outside and have a peek up there. Eventually, the copper will.
Patina, yeah.
Will patina, but right now, it's beautiful.
You can
copper.
accelerate it if you wanted to, but it's better to let it just do its thing.
But every ledge, every piece of flashing was replaced in the entire building.
And so was that all in the original style, or was that, you talked about the Dutch style of
Yeah,
gutter.
that-
So is that connected to the way they would have done it historically?
Yes, exactly. So I believe when the dome burned off, they had to replace it. They probably had enough to replace it in kind. So that piece wasn't too bad. There were some areas where the detail was rotted, yeah, but yeah.
Do you think the original was copper or the original was tin or something?
Probably tin.
Yeah, they didn't have a lot of money. So there are many ways in which the building is much better now than it has ever been. It will last longer now than it ever was planned on.
The first church has that dome is lead.
Yeah.
And then the lower decks are soldered tin.
Wow. Isn't that pretty? But all that soldering, all the little pieces around the top.
A lot of work.
As you mentioned, the cupola had completely rotted out because it was replaced with Doug fir. It had burned. And so this is a completely new cupola. And with all of its new louvers and new copper, and there's that built-up gutter. They let the heat out. Looks cool. They actually don't, no, it's just vents. It's just vents. Yeah, so in 90, after 95, they actually made an exhaust vent up at the top. Yeah, and there's fans up there that turn on when it's 85 degrees up in there and start exhausting out.
It's one thing that the project didn't have was an HVAC unit. So we gotta cool this down as best as we can.
Yeah, so in the project to rebuild after the fire was $6 million. And some of that funding, because we're hosting 3rd Street Community Center, which is not at all a religious organization. It's a STEM program. They're completely independent. And because of that, we were able to raise funds from government sources. We actually had grants from the city and so forth. But that still, even in those days and that much money, was not enough to put air conditioning in. The 98 plans, the 95 to 98 plans, have the locations and ducting routing and so forth for air conditioning units. And we did look at it before this capital campaign, but my initial even minimal, like the minimum it was going to cost was about $350,000, and that's before prices went up. And as a lot of you who were involved know, we had to do 2 rounds of capital campaign funding to get enough to do the whole church. We had done our first round. We did great. We got 1.4 million, which is a bunch of money. And then we found out what it really costs to fix a building. After they did the complete inspection, and it's like, okay, this really needs to be fixed. We've got too much rot. We can't just leave it. We've got to come up with enough money to fix all those ledges, or the building's just going to fall apart, and it wouldn't be, a responsible thing to do, to leave it in that condition after going up. And so we did. When they looked at repairing everything, and we looked at getting good quality materials. So in addition to the copper, won't rot out like the tin. These are the tops. This roofing is a 50-year warranty. It's a 50-year roof. And you see along the edges, all the flashing has been replaced with copper, and all the downspouts with copper. And you guys had some special milling done, is that right?
We had some special trim because it was rotted, and I think that was fur also, and then wood epoxy on some of the missing parts that were rotted, and then spent some time figuring out how to detail that top, because it was there was some settling in the building and the water was running the wrong direction. So we did a water test and I think we added extra gutters up there. So because it was too long a run, the water wouldn't have got out. So did water tests. So, and I'm luckily that, our office is 10 minutes away from here. So I come to the site a lot and do the quality control. Not everybody can, most people can't do a job like this without a plan, and we have so much experience that we know if it's going to leak and hopefully catch all those things and do the required tests to make it right.
And they know they're 10 minutes away, so we will call them if it does leak.
It was terrible.
And we do.
No, it's not at all.
This is when they did the shingles on the turrets and towers first, worked that before they did the big field. And so it just, when Patrick and I would run up there and have a look, it's like, oh, we've got a turret. Look. It's very exciting.
So this is legacy roofing, and their guys really did a great job. They had to actually cut the shingles at angles to make that curve on the domes and all. And their guy was really, really good, and they took a lot of time. I had to do a little bit of adjustment here and there, kick them in the butt once in a while, but for the most part, they were, I probably wouldn't have want to had anybody else on this job that I know, because they were a good partner. They did the sheet metal and they did the roof work.
All the copper work? Oh, okay. Yeah. Was all the sheet metal was copper.
Those details there, I'm kind of proud of that. I designed how that copper was going to go around there. They weren't going to do it at first, and we had to do it. And so that one of the things you need is a kick so that the water gets away from the wood. So it made it harder for them to make it the way I wanted to do it, but they figured it out. And I think we reused some of those windows in there also, and then had a couple replicated. But and then the light, we got the light to work again. So
This is the dome. The bell tower's up there.
And does not have a bell.
It does not have a bell, no. Yeah, up in the top of the cupola, up above is a light. If you come here at night, you'll see through the stained glass up at the very top there.
those sills are rotted out too, so we had to take a piece out and replicate that arch, and had to change the detail a little bit because it wasn't a good detail before it let the water in, so we pushed the sill back inside farther and brought the window down on it instead of butting it to it, so the water will go down the face and run off. So that should last a couple of years.
Just a couple?
Taillight warranty on that one.
That's why we hired these guys, because they didn't just put it back the way it was, they put it back better. And you want to tell them about all those,
The sills?
yeah, putting the copper on the sills?
Yeah, so a couple of good things happen along the way. One of them is Brad, my superintendent, was working with the plaster up in Oakland on our Oak Knoll project. And he had, I guess the plaster has tons of scaffolding. So he said Brad talked to him, he said he could do this job. We saved, I don't know, an unbelievable amount of money. So that we reallocated money in different places, and so we could upgrade things that we needed to do. For example, these sills, it's pretty much bulletproof now. You saw how rotted it was before. So we took that sheet metal out and put fillers in there, and then put copper flashing on the sills with a kick, and that's going to last, way beyond us. But
Longer than the roof even.
What's that?
Longer than the shingles on the roof, probably.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, a couple of those things, we were able to cut the budget somewhere and increase it. Not actually cut, but we bought it out at a better price, or we did something creative, save money here, put it over there. And then one of the results of that scaffold money is getting the stained glass windows refurbished as well, so.
There were, after they did their inspections, they decided there were half a dozen of these stained glass windows were removed and taken to an artist to be
Highland did it, did a great job, and had to reglaze them. The putty was all dried out and rotted, and my guys fixed some of the trim and the hardware and such, so that should last a while as well.
And they open better now. They had gotten, you want to tell them how they were worn? Anyway.
The hardware was, worn out, and I guess some of it they just fixed in place, right? So they couldn't actually open at all.
Yeah. The windows had been opening on the little rods for enough decades that they had worn enough that you had to lift the window up and then out. And people didn't always do that. They'd push on the window, on the glass. So they've also added a few, some of these have a few extra support rails to help them over the next several decades.
Yeah, there's a certain square footage. The sun heats up the lead and the glass, and if you spread those supports out too far, you'll get a belly. It actually will warp. The lead it'll sink in or out. So if you put more of those cross rods in there, that won't occur anymore. Hopefully. It's the taillight warning. Yeah.
You guys did a lot of work on the fish scales.
Yeah, Sheets Enterprises basically replicated those, were rotted, and that came out nice. They cut them with jigsaws in their shop down off of South First Street, so they were a good partner on that as well.
And then we had a few cracks, as it turned out. But instead of just taking a little section or putting epoxy in, they completely ground them out and reconnected the walls together on all of these.
Yeah, you just put a filler in there, it's just going to crack again. So that the right way to do it is to grind the crack out, make it wide enough so, and put a adhesive in there so everything will stick together.
And then we got to get ready to re-roof the whole field of the building. And that's, on the side of the dome and looking back at the hall. About what? Oh, yeah. They knew it was going to take a while. And so long before the shingles went up, the roof was actually buttoned up with a membrane roof.
It's self-stick it's like fire and ice, but it's a self-stick membrane. Yeah, the roofer's really busy, very popular, so, that's another reason they're probably PO'd at me, because I kept jamming on them to get this place covered up, because with a dome like that, it's real hard to do temporary protection, especially with the northwest wind's gonna come this way, and we're pretty darn good at it, but this is special, and I had visions of water coming through, and so I'm not really unhappy that they're unhappy because they got it done.
Yeah.
I didn't need to be popular. We just need to get the job done.
And then,
It's beautiful.
yeah, it is. That's the side up Hattie Porter Hall. There's the dome. And after months and months of not seeing our building, I remember coming the first day when they had uncovered the front and seeing our bell tower and seeing the front and seeing it in its new colors and its shiny copper, and brought a tear to my eye after all the years of work by everybody to make that happen. And then when they took the longest thing was that scaffold stayed up for a long time waiting for the artist to finish the windows. And once those windows finally went in, then the rest of the scaffold came down. And as mentioned, we did put the awning in. And a lot of people didn't notice the beehive lamp until we put the awning in. But it's always been there. That's original equipment as far as we know. And they took down all those lamps and cleaned them all up, so the glass is all clear and shiny. Really, everything that was done, everything that was left was improved. And you see the little fencing, we improved our fencing and did it in the same style that was attractive. And then this is the Hattie Porter Hall floor. You can take a peek if you haven't recently. And it was a full restoration in that there were boards. There was what, Doug fir?
Yes.
Douglas fir. Underneath the carpet is oak, except where it's been replaced with plywood after the fire. But they didn't have enough money for oak in the hall. And so that's a softwood floor that's had a lot of use over the years. And there were boards that were split, but you guys found some.
I have a lot in my archives, and there's different thicknesses and widths are about the same. That actually is top nailed. It's not T&G, and we have that too. So we used original antique Douglas fir to match what existing.
You said that it come out of a barn?
That came out of a barn down in South San Jose, where I think there's a Costco there now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's fun about top nail, it's easier to get it out. And T&G is a pain in the neck because they blind nail it.
T&G is tongue and
Tongue and
groove.
groove. Yeah, tongue and groove.
And yeah, it's kind of nice we have this a whole bunch of different salvage stuff that we can. It's, to me, that's one of the things I have the most fun with, is repurposing things to go back and make it look original. I just get a kick out of that.
Anything else you want to add about this project in particular?
No, I just happy that you guys trusted us to do the job, and again, the collaboration was fantastic.
And you gave us a discount because of that great collaboration, right?
Somewhat.
We didn't get charged extra for it.
No.
Anyway.
No, I think between Jim and all of us, we managed the money pretty well.
We did. We got a lot done. It took us, having had that second round, needing to do that second round of funding. Well, they went back and rebid all of their subcontractors to find better and less expensive ways of doing it.
Yeah,
And-
Brad was a big part of that, especially on the scaffold, but
Yeah.
we just got,
We're at about 2 million with the interior.
We want to have microphones. We do have, I think we're in the Q&A.
Yeah, we're in the
question
Q&A.
section.
It was $78,000 for that initial.
The initial tech stuff. Yeah, the initial investigation, inspection, all the drone footage. So you can add that on there. Yeah, but the beauty, one of the best things for me, Mr. Salata, is having you and your team take such an interest in the building. As much as we love this building, you all fell in love with this building, and it was obvious.
Yeah.
You were committed to, they had the same vision as we did to get this all done. So I just wanted to say thank you again.
you're welcome.
I mean, I think we can recommend to anyone in the audience, when you have your like more than 100-year-old historical building that you need to be restored, which of course so many of you have here, I'm sure. This is the Garden City is the group to work with, truly.
Yeah, Tom, any other questions or? So, yeah, what did we do that was the most important thing we did to keep have the building still be standing 100 years from now?
In the eyes of the people, 100 years from now, yes.
So I expect that they'll look at the care with all the flashing. You've got to protect that woodwork, or a wood building just falls apart. It's the details of the flashing being right to protect the building. And, they could have done it easier. They could have done it faster. They could have done it cheaper or more profit, and they didn't. They did it right. So that's why we're thrilled.
But you still are going to have to maintain it sometime in the 100-year period.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one reason to put those flashings on the western exposure, because the sun just going to eat it up out there. So that'll help a lot. But yeah, and then hopefully, if there's any mistakes we made that we find out it's small, and we can address that. But I feel pretty good about it. The funny thing was, we put gutter screens everywhere, and I never would have thought of this. On that little dome right there above the library, the water comes down that dome so fast, it can't get in the gutter screen. So we actually ended up taking them off over there, because that's not your wrist side. Your wrist side's over here where the trees are. So You might have to clean the gutter once in a while, but I never would have thought the water would go that fast down there. And as I saw on the ground after the first rain, I saw the drip line in the dirt. I'm going, what the heck? And then I look up and I figured out, wow, the water goes too fast.
Yeah.
So we had to do a couple adjustments out
That's right.
here and put a couple diverters in, and not take the gutter screens out on that side because you need to have them. That's what part of the problem of the entryway where the rot and all that was, because you just filled up with those pine needles all the time and whatever.
So I'm curious, is that partially just thinking about like the shape of the kind of like bell shape? So like it's really steep, so it goes down very fast, but then at the end it bells out, and so it like shoots off horizontally.
Exactly.
Kind of like a ski slope.
Yeah.
Exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. Ski jump.
Yeah, another question? Sorry. Yeah, the Transylvania connection is that Unitarianism started in Transylvania. And we have a partner church in Transylvania, and we go visit. And I have been told that when they come here and they look at this building, it feels very much like home.
Huh.
The exterior feels like home. We're in the round here, which is sort of unique. And I'll just mention quick, if you've been here before we did the recent restoration, you sat in theater seats in the round. Well, those were not original. They had rectangular, straight bench pews like normal. But in the 60s, they bought 1930s theater seats and put them in the round. And that was the start of that. And then, it left room for a labyrinth. And so during this recent, you can see we've got new carpet. There's a whole interior remodeling that we're almost done with, almost. As of today, we have working water in the upstairs bathroom. But we kept the best of the theater seats up in the balcony, and then we put the modern seats down. But we still like to have the labyrinth. People come and meditate during the week and on Sunday. Yeah.
Those little plaques that were on the old theater seats, where are they going to go?
So the little dedication plaques of all the folks who contributed to rebuilding, they are all mounted on the balcony seats. Every single one of them was saved. And the seats that from down here were better quality. So they actually pulled the old seats out of the balcony and carpeted, and then moved the seats that were down here up there and reset all of the seating up there, collected all of the plaques and put them all on those seats. Yeah. Yes, Tom?
We learned about the bell tower, but tell us now about the bell. Is there a history? Are there plans? When would we want to hear it?
So bells are expensive, and we've always seemed to need a roof. And so the priority has always been for a roof instead of a bell.
And there's never been a bell, or do we know
There's
that?
never been a bell.
Yeah.
Although our church did send us a
Ye-
donation
Yes.
to buy a bell.
Our partner church sent us a donation to buy a bell, and it would, like a dinner bell. No, a very nice dinner bell. It was, it was not an insignificant gift, but compared to the cost of a bell, we would have to do a separate capital campaign fund to do a bell. It's in the several tens of thousands of dollars to get a church bell up there. Yeah, Tom?
With the closure of churches, I wonder if there's a market for historic bells that Unitarian could tap into.
Yeah, maybe. We're just happy to be done. Be honest. So, yeah. Any other questions? Thank you so much for coming.